Hello, back with another video. It's actually been a little while. Had to start my third year of university, so there's been a lot going on. But I've got the time today to record, and another video nearly ready to record as well. Might even be done this weekend. So yeah, keeping on it a bit at least. So yeah, this video I'm going to be talking about the manga Centuria. Just going to go talk about my thoughts on it. I read up to pretty much the point where it is. I think well, I read it a little while ago now, so I think I'm maybe 2 chapters behind, maybe just one. Just go through my thoughts on it, the notes I've got written down here. So yeah, let's just go for it. So I think to start, best thing to do, just tell you what the premise is. I obviously am going to be going into spoilers, so if you haven't read it, this first part is going to be the only bit you should probably watch. Unless you decide you don't want to read it, of course, then it's up to you. But if you want to read it, get sort of, once you're through this recap, then go read it. It's pretty good. So we start with this guy Julian. He's this guy. He is a stowaway on a ship, and he gets caught, and the crew are about to kill him. But then the slaves on the ship say just make him a slave, and we'll split our food with him. So he is taken in by the slaves, and he becomes friends with this woman named Mira, and we learn that he was sold into slavery when he was much younger, unclear how old, by his mother, and it's quite tragic, but he gets close with the slaves, and it's sort of the first time he's experiencing kindness and compassion. And then they get to this kind of stormy area, and it's revealed that the crew actually have these slaves, so they can kill the slaves and pretend the storm killed the slaves, and then get the insurance money. So they start killing all the slaves. Everyone except Julian and Mira dies. Then this sea monster, this guy in the middle, this sea god comes out of the sea and says, I'm here to claim 100 souls. 99 people have died, so one of you's got to die. So Mira sacrificed herself, and she was pregnant, by the way. That's why there's a baby. The baby was hers. And then the sea god gives Julian the power of the strength and resistance and stuff of 100 people, and also he has 100 lives, so he can die 100 times. And then sorry, my brain just went blank, but anyway, then Julian and the baby go off to do some other stuff. I won't get into that yet. So yeah, that's the premise. If you think that premise is cool, go read Centuria, because it's probably not going to defy expectations, but it's definitely going to meet them. It's pretty good, it's pretty fun, some good action. I'll get into stuff like that in a mo. So yeah, go read it. If you don't care, keep watching the video. Or obviously if you've already read it. So I think the important place to start here is the themes. We've got sort of a very obvious thematic clash. 2 different themes that clash with each other, and that sort of creates, 2 different forces that clash with each other, and that creates the theme. And that theme is compassion versus cruelty, and how this sort of almost innate, I think, almost innately cruel world, and how compassion can triumph over said cruelty, as we saw in this first chapter, through the slaves giving Julian their food and making sure he isn't killed. Oh, that was awful. And then he is sort of gonna be compassionate. He promises to be compassionate in spite of his lack of experience of compassion, I guess, to make up for the sacrifice that these 100 slaves made. So we've got these two opposing aspects, so we'll go into both of them in more detail here. Starting off, we got the cruelty. So cruelty in this case, we get the established thing. The killing of the slaves, the main cruel act here. There's human-on-human violence, which is important because obviously we do have these supernatural forces, and their violence is has a different role thematically. Is the main ascent of the cruelty, and obviously there's just the innate cruelty of the slavery itself. There isn't too much slavery in this because the country that Julian and Diana, who's the baby, I forgot to say that, I think, go to, has actually outlawed slavery, so we don't really see that many slaves. But it's obviously like a very prevalent thing in the wider world of this story, and there are some slaves even in this. They may have outlawed slavery, but they haven't eradicated slavery. Those are two different things. Eradicating slavery is quite difficult, especially if it's like innately baked into world systems, right? So like, even if the country doesn't have slavery, the whole rest of the world is relying on slavery to do X and Y. So it's very difficult to actually kind of eradicate slavery from a country at this point in time. Compared to, the real world right now, even though I don't think slavery has been eradicated, but still, it's much easier to. And then I guess a more sort of force of cruelty character specifically would be the character Arkos. So this guy's the son of the king of the kingdom Julian and Diana sort of wash up in. And he's also got kind of powers. There's a lot of people who have like sea god inspired powers. In this case, because they're descended from the king, who was also like blessed, same as Julian. This guy can control water, including obviously the water that's in the plasma of your blood, and he uses that basically to torture people and kill them in really horrific ways. And in turn, he's killed by Julian. He's specifically drowned by Julian, which is obviously this kind of ironic twist, which I quite liked. And I think Arkos is a great representation of cruelty. He's not so much of like a character in a lot of ways. He's just he's a bit of a caricature, but he kind of fits the role of a symbol of this sort of perpetual cruelty within the world of Centuria, right? And then on the other side, you have this more institutional, maybe would be the word here, cruelty. I guess. Does that work? I think so. We'll go with institutional cruelty. Even though Arkos is obviously a part of the institutions of the country, he kind of is acting outside of that institution, whereas the character Elstri, who is sort of the primary antagonist of the manga, at least so far, is a much more of a representation of institutional cruelty. A lot of what she does is more because she thinks it's necessary rather than because she enjoys it, whereas Arkos, it's all about enjoyment. So, these two different facets of cruelty are both being explored. This one in a bit more depth because Arkos, he's already dead. He died ages ago in the manga at this point, and they haven't really brought another character like that in. But yeah, obviously the most notable example of this is when she is trying to kill Julian and Diana, and the villagers step in to protect them, so she just orders all these innocent villagers to be killed by these soldiers, and of course these soldiers being, silly idiots, just go ahead with it. So yeah, we got these two different forces of cruelty. They're both being enacted on the kingdom in general. Also, they're both being enacted specifically on Julian and the people he's close to. So we can kind of use Julian as a representation of the world, I guess, in this regard. Bear in mind that he's sort of the spirit of 100 people as well. So there's he's also representative of a mass population anyway. So it's quite easy to then conflate that further and make him a representation of the world and how cruelty is enacted upon people in the world by other people in the world, because it's not like Julian doesn't ever do any wrong in this manga either. And the reason they're going after baby, I probably should have mentioned that already. The reason they want to kill baby Diana is because she has this goat inside of her. I just circled that with my finger. I should use a mouse. She has this goat inside of her that's like some evil god, and it means that one day the king will be killed by her. That's where they want to kill her. It's quite an important bit of plot information that I'm going to need to inform you of now. So yeah, then by contrast, we have compassion, and in this case, that's being enacted by Julian onto his environment, as well as a few other characters, but primarily Julian. And that's having a transformative effect, limiting acts of cruelty, and stopping other acts of cruelty. You know, some of them are stopped, some of them are being prevented before they've even started. The most obvious and I think best example of this would be with Princess Lacrima, who's Arkos' sister, who is kind of being abused by him, being physically abused, but because of how ignored she is within the sort of royal family, she actually is kind of grateful to him, and also obviously it's this kind of dependency thing, I guess, because, you know, all she's known basically her whole life, I imagine, would be her being abused. So there's nothing else for her to kind of compare. There's no experiences to compare. Anyway, when Arkos gets killed, she goes after Julian for revenge. Not exactly surprising. And what happens is Julian shows her compassion because he understands why she's doing this. She wants revenge, but at the same time, Arkos, he was awful. He killed people that Julian loved, so it's not like he really did any wrong. It's a misunderstanding, I guess, in that regard, that's created this conflict. And by showing her compassion and not killing her, because he could easily have killed her, and letting her come and visit them, she ends up bonding with them, and then she basically switches sides, and there she is on the right, defending Diana from Elstri, who I already mentioned, and it's great. This is like a really strong, maybe not the most original, but pretty strong character arc. Lacrima's a very likable character. She might be my favorite character other than Julian. So I'd say this is basically, it's a thematic strong point, it's a narrative strong point, it's a character strong point. This is kind of the best part of the manga. And then we also go into this more deeper facet with Julian, because it's not like Julian is exclusively compassionate. There's definitely plenty of cruelty as well. It's almost like, again, you can spread him out. That sounds insane. Let's rephrase. You can kind of expand him as a symbol into the world, because there's a good mix of compassion and cruelty, just like in the world, I guess, you know? The most significant example of this is when he actually finds his mother enslaved, and sorry, I'm a bit sleepy right now. My brain's gone blank again. He finds his mother. She's a slave now. He buys her, and he's gonna kill her. This is what's going on the left here. But she dies before he even has the opportunity. There's a very interesting conversation afterwards that he has about the fact that he doesn't get to unleash the sort of anger he has at the person who sort of gave him this insane trauma by selling him into slavery. will that harm him in the future? Will that mean that he pushes that anger onto somebody who maybe doesn't deserve it, for example, right? Will he ever be able to get that anger out in a way that is actually safe and maybe acceptable now that his mother is dead, even if it's probably a good thing that he didn't kill her, right? It's quite an interesting conflict and an interesting idea, and I think it's been explored relatively shallowly so far, but it's very clearly going to be explored more because this manga is not finished. So I wouldn't say that's a big issue thus far. And then on the other hand, we have this kind of assassin. So there's a time skip. I would say now it's about a third of the way through the manga at this point. During this time skip, we know that Julian killed like a lot of assassins. And he just kind of kills them indiscriminately. And obviously a question is raised of like whether or not this is like an appropriate response. Like, what if you were compassionate to all of these assassins in the same way that Julian is compassionate to like Lacrima, or this kind of bone lady down here, he also spares her and then she helps him in return. But like these guys, what if he was compassionate to them? What if he doesn't kill them, right? Wouldn't that have been the right thing to do? So again, and I think this is tied to this kind of traumatic unleashing of anger thing. Is there ever a right scenario to do that? Is it this kind of impossibility? Like the anger you get from trauma caused by you, how do you actually let that out? Because you can't really just let it simmer, because that's just going to make it worse. But obviously letting out in this way, you're basically affecting somebody who had nothing to do with it. Is that necessarily fair? Especially since, as Lacrima points out in this panel in the middle, these people, they have their own lives. So not only are you fucking up their life, you're fucking up their loved ones' lives, So yeah, I think that's a very interesting line to follow, and it's been explored a little bit more than this stuff with the mother. But again, all of this stuff is going to be explored more, I can only imagine, in the future. I really hope they do, because it's a really interesting idea, and currently it's being executed pretty well. Obviously they could fuck up the conclusion, which I would really hope to not see. The conclusion of this thematic exploration, I guess. But for now, I think they're probably good. That's not going to be an issue, if I had to guess. Because I'd say that so far thematic handling in this manga has been pretty strong. And then we have the king. So I already mentioned him. Well, I didn't mention him, but I mentioned something he did already. Excuse me a second. So I already mentioned that the king abolished slavery in this kingdom in an act of compassion, and generally everything we've seen from him is compassionate. So Elstri, who I already talked about, is like an advisor to the king, and she's trying to kill the baby Diana, because Diana's going to kill the king one day, she believes, because she has like the gift of prophecy, and that's a prophecy that she prophesized. And the king is opposed to this. He doesn't want to kill Diana. She hasn't done anything wrong yet, and the prophecy could be changed, because we know that already there's prophecies that have already happened which aren't necessarily going to come true. Right? None of these prophecies that Elstri has are guaranteed. So is the measure of killing this baby necessary? Probably not. Not to mention, this guy's old as fuck. She could kill him when he wants to die of old age. Like, that's something I was thinking immediately. If you took this baby into the kingdom and nurtured it in an appropriate way, then you could probably have it kill the king on his own terms, I think Elstri, it's good characterization, but she really isn't thinking it through, Anyway, the king is a very compassionate guy. I think that his current character and the key character traits that he holds are probably going to be character traits that Julian has adopted by the end of the story. My reason for thinking this is two things. First of all, they're the only two characters we know who were blessed directly by this kind of sea god in that first chapter. Everyone else who has powers, and there's a lot of fucking people with powers, they got them through genetic relation to the king, and the king is like probably like 500 years old. So he has a lot of fucking descendants. And then second of all, there's this there's like passing line where someone's like, I heard the king used to be really ruthless, but now he's like a pacifist. And that obviously applies to Julian, right? That guy is currently fucking ruthless. He kills people pretty wild ways. Like, but obviously the end goal will be for him to be this kind of 100% compassionate being who isn't violent, really. And that's the same as the king. So we can kind of see this character as an end goal for Julian, as well as a sort of playing a thematic role in this compassion-cruelty clash. Twofold, he also has an interesting personality, and I want to know how the fuck he's 500 years old. So there's a lot to go here. I'd say this is a really great bit of characterization. Let's add that bit on the end there. So there's also a kind of secondary theme that shows up, and it's obviously going to play a significant role and continue to play a significant role, but I would say, unlike this compassion versus cruelty theme, it's not currently being executed particularly effectively, and that's just kind of supreme natural forces versus humanity angle. So we can see here, I already mentioned we've got the sea god that blessed Julian. This is kind of the full design. Looks fucking cool as hell. I will say that, and we'll get more into the art later. But this is, it's gorgeous. And we've also got the goat, which is some other sort of god. Don't really know much about this goat right now. It's another god though, and it's inside Diana. Anyway, so before Arkos shows up and the story kind of moves into this, well, before the time skip in that regard, there's this bit where this weird forest monster is like attacking Julian's friends, and he goes and beats it up. This is like the only time they've really addressed this man versus supernatural theme properly. Like, the rest of it has mostly just been set up, i.e. setting up these supernatural like deities. Oh, that's gonna have made a really loud noise on the mic, isn't it? Whatever. Sorry if it did, but I'm not gonna do anything about it. What was I about to say? Fuck, man, I keep losing track of everything. Oh yeah, so that's the only time they've really explored this, and it was fucking ages ago at this point. And like, other than that, I would say I don't really feel like this theme is going to be anywhere near as interestingly explored. It's clearly playing this secondary role to the compassion versus cruelty thing, at least for now. And I feel like they're going to pull it in at the end to make the finale more bombastic, and it's not going to work because they haven't set it up for enough time. That's my kind of concern with this theme. I think they need to be more... It needs to be a higher frequency of supernatural occurrences, or at least mentions of these supernatural beings, or maybe even appearances of these supernatural beings. It's just too infrequent for this theme to really feel like it has any setup, and that means it probably also won't feel like it has any payoff, right? You need setup to have payoff. If there's not enough setup, there won't be enough payoff, and the payoff is, how we determine how well executed it is, right? So they need to get this down, right? The mangaka needs to get this down. More frequent inclusions of the supernatural, I think, could really turn this theme around. Of course, it's not the primary theme, so it doesn't matter as much, but it's still like a significant thing, and I'd rather they not miss with it, So yeah, that's my kind of thematic understanding, and obviously themes, that's the sort of main thing I like to talk about, so I think that's probably the main coverage for now. But there are some other things I'd like to go through quickly that aren't really related to theme. Well, they are a little, but I can't be bothered to link them to the themes. So I just want to talk about them in vacuum to a degree, I guess. So yeah, starting off with some other characters I haven't really bothered to mention yet, because we already covered Julian and we covered the king and like Arkos and stuff. But like, yeah. So first off, we got this guy Lukas. So he shows up just after the time skip, and he kind of becomes very good friends with Julian. And we also learn that he is like a secret bastard son of the king, and he wants to kill his dad in revenge. We don't really know why he wants revenge. And that's it. It's all really set up for him right now. I really want to know more. And I mean, he's got a good design as well. I mean, this is a pretty well designed character. My problem really, I think, with Lukas though, is that he's just not got the most interesting personality compared to Julian, who's this very sort of, well, it's not a commonplace personality, right? You don't see it in the real world. But Lukas's personality, there's like 500 people I know who have that exact personality. It's like a really common personality, doesn't really fit in with the world at all. So he doesn't really feel like that interesting of a character beyond the setup that they've done so far for how he's going to play into this king backstory reveal and stuff. So I can't in all consciousness say he's anything but like a mediocre character for now, to be honest. I hold my hands up. Another character worth noting is post time skip Diana, who is about 6, but physically has aged significantly more than that. Considering that she spends a lot of time as a baby, she's pretty well characterized. There's a lot of interesting stuff they do with her. Obviously, she's been very isolated, especially post time skip, because they've kind of been on the run. And because of that, as much as she understands why the isolation is necessary, like she knows that she's being hunted down by Elstri and these assassins and such, like she's still fully, she's still reasonably upset by it. And she talks to this goat. There's one chapter where she talks to the goat. Kind of wish there was a second chapter where she talked to the goat. And yeah, she's also very likable. She's very cute. It's a good child character, I don't know. Good character. So then we have Titi and Angvall. So these two find Julian and Diana when they kind of wash up on the beach. And they kind of form a little family unit before Angvall is killed. Angvall is killed by Arkos, the guy I mentioned earlier. And then Julian, Titi, and Diana have to leave after Julian kills Arkos and blah blah blah. We've got that part of the narrative down, right? Now, Titi is a pretty interesting character, I would say, but they don't have anything to do with her anymore, right? So towards the beginning, we learn that she was she was a refugee from the other side of this war that Angvall was in, and then Angvall adopted her, and that's very sweet, and it makes for quite an interesting origin, and she has quite an interesting personality. But post time skip, it kind of feels like she's just been around, especially with the last maybe 20 chapters or so, which has basically just been an extended action set piece. She doesn't have anything to do because she doesn't have any fighting training, she doesn't have any powers or anything, so she's just kind of been around. That's quite unfortunate because it means they can't do much exploration with her character. Obviously, we're nearing the end of this arc, we're nearing the end of this action. After that, we can get some more Titi development, but it does mean that her development and her exploration into her character is sporadic, right? It's quite sparse as well. As for Angvall, my only issue with her really is that it's really obvious that she's going to die early into the story. They set that up, it's like too on the nose. I think that she's going to die, and that's a problem because it means I don't really get invested in her character, so her death is less impactful, and it means I have lots to say about her in this video. So that's all I'm going to say. But she is a likable character. I can't say it's like bad. It's just a bit predictable. Now I do have more to say on Elstri, who I already did mention. And I basically want to talk about with her, she's kind of this representation of institutionalization. That was I'm glad I got that first try. So basically, she could see into the future, blah blah blah. and the first prophecy she ever received was that basically you're fucked. But she didn't get fucked because she got ran over by a horse, and then the king basically revives her. So then she remains loyal to him. It kind of goes to show, I think, something about institutionalization that I think is quite interesting. Because a lot of people who are kind of within institutions of cruelty, so let's take a real world example of the police, right? So the police, they enact a lot of cruelty, but a lot of these people, they end up institutionalized because of the good that certain individuals within the police do, right? I don't really have an example here, but you know what I mean. Following a role model into the institution of cruelty is a really common way in which people are institutionalized, and it's kind of sad really for them, because they are, they're not going to be doing good things in spite of what they hope to be doing, and that sucks. And Elstri is a really good example of that. This super loyalty, which I think has been going on for centuries, to the king, and how she's so loyal to him that she's going behind his back to kill a baby and stuff. It's pretty nonsensical, and I think it goes to show how nonsensical institutionalization is. And then we have Altus. So you might think, oh, I recognize that guy. It's the guy you were talking about earlier, Arkos, but it's not. It's his corpse that's been reanimated and has a new personality inside it. So this guy just got introduced. He's only been around for 10 chapters. And already the setup and everything they've done with this guy is so strong. You can tell that he's going to be a standout character by the end of this manga. It's really interesting. So first of all, he's fully aware of the fact that he's a reanimated corpse. What he's not really aware of is the reputation that Arkos had as this genuinely evil person. So first of all, he's got to grapple with that, and I think there's obviously two directions you can take that, and I think either one could work, and I'm really interested in seeing which one they take. You have the one, him going against Arkos's old reputation and trying to destroy it, and two, him just accepting it and becoming super duper evil. Either way, I think it would work thematically either way. I think it would be interesting either way, and I'm here for it either way. So yeah, 10 chapters, great setup. I love that he gets PTSD flashback from seeing Julian as well. That's kind of cool to see, and that makes Arkos kind of awaken and makes him more powerful, which is very interesting as well. Yeah, that's all the interesting characters. There are some other characters. I have literally nothing to say on them, so there's nothing else to add. Next thing I wanted to talk about is the art and the general presentation of this manga. So first thing you might notice with this panel on the left is, in particular, the art in this is at times really gorgeous, especially when they have a lot of black and grey. This hatching and stuff here is really, really well done. By contrast, this isn't anywhere near as well drawn, but this is really gorgeous. And I think a special shout out has to go to any drawing of these kind of supernatural gods. These are so well done. The designs are amazing. The execution of the drawings is amazing. It's really, 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 really great. But yeah, generally the darker the panel, the better drawn it's going to be, because this is well drawn as well. But then by contrast, I wouldn't exactly call these excellent manga panels, They're just serviceable. Character design, I would say, is also not particularly memorable. It's serviceable, but it's not particularly special. And then you might be wondering why I've got this red circle, and it's because this is my biggest pet peeve with this manga, and it's these stupid bits of narration, I guess. These just suck. She learns the origin of their bond. Okay, so obviously within the panel that doesn't seem like a big issue, but what we've got to understand is we were just basically told this through the actual manga and the dialogue in the manga pretty explicitly. So what's the point of putting it here? And there's so many of these. There's one at the beginning and at the end of every single chapter, and every single one is useless because it's all really obvious. Everything they say is always really obvious. and it just pisses me off so much. Because like if it wasn't there, it would be better, because it would actually mean you could like you had to rely on your own like intuition, at least to a degree, rather than just being like spoon-fed everything, and it's just not very fun. But yeah, other than that, the presentation of this manga is pretty solid. So yeah, now last thing I wanted to talk about is the structure. Well, the structure thus far, because we're only like 60 chapters in, and this manga's clearly going for like, if I had to guess, it's going for over 200 chapters. I think they could get away with over 200 anyway. We've currently got kind of 2 main arcs. I know there's technically more arcs, but there's 2 arcs really. You got the first part pre-time skip, and then you got the post-time skip, which is about to kind of end. I think we're about to go into potentially another time skip. So yeah, this first arc, it starts really strong. We got that first chapter, I recapped it to you. That's a great chapter. Then meeting Titi and Angvall, that's pretty great. But then it kind of loses itself, because it goes into this extended fighting this forest monster, which has not really come back yet. Feels like a waste of time. The end of the arc is okay, but I feel like Arkos as like a kind of final antagonist of the arc, it doesn't really work, because first of all, he was introduced only like 2 chapters before, and second of all, he's not much of a character. He's more of a force of nature within the narrative, right? He's the force of cruelty, I guess. Which means that you know, the final conflict of this arc isn't like super duper strong. In fact, I would say this conflict, which is in this panel of him fighting the forest monster, is like stronger. Then we have the second arc. I would say this arc is much more solid. It's highlighted by the Lacrima character arc, which I talked about earlier, and that's really strong. The action in this arc is amazing. The powers are more interesting. The water bending stuff is not as interesting as some of the other powers in this. And also, I mean, the characters involved and the stakes of theirs are stronger as well, and there's better setup for the fight at the end. It's just great. The one thing I will say is that this kind of extended action set piece that we're in right now, it's coming to a close now, so I'm not too worried about it, but it does feel like it's starting to drag. A lot of the characters who are still in it feels like they should have been taken out way earlier, and they're just kind of there to show off cool powers. You could hold off and introduce them later and show off the cool powers later, and then you'd have like a more steady stream of action rather than these kind of dragged out fights. I think that would maybe be better. But beyond that, I think the structure here, pretty good. This arc is pretty solid. And that is, I think, everything. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on the manga. I would say it's like a 6 out of 10, boring on a 7. If the next arc is as good as this arc, it will be a 7. But for now, I think it's probably a 6. Go read it if you didn't and you still haven't read it. But it sounds cool. Go read it. And yeah, that's kind of all I've got to say. So yeah, bye.